One side note before we begin looking at Job. I saw a chart today, and I kind of like charts. And I had never seen a chart like this before. This is a chart of the number of churches in the 40 largest religious groups in the United States. So the different denominations or groups in the United States and how many churches are in each one. And you can't read it, right? It's impossibly small for you. All right, but you know what the largest religious group in the United States is? Hold on, I got to rephrase that. As far as number of churches. Not number of people, but number of locations.
Baptist.
The Southern Baptist Convention. They're number one. This is from 2020. 51,000 church buildings.
But are they all?
The Catholic Church is number 4. It says 19,000. But I think you know many Catholic churches are quite a bit bigger than Baptist churches. Anyways, do you know who makes it onto the list?
Wow.
The Wells does.
What?
Number 38. Right here. Number 38.
Not 39.
I was actually really impressed by that. Like if someone would have said to you, do you think the Wisconsin Synod makes it on the list of the 40 largest religious groups in the United States? I would have said no. I would have thought no way. But here we are.
How many?
So at the end, at 2020, we had 1,198 churches.
But are all these churches active? I mean, are they in
Well,
operation?
I think that to be on this list, that they would have been in operation. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's 50,000 Southern Baptist Convention churches, which you drive around. Not really surprising, right, to see that. Brent?
So this is physical buildings, correct? Like
This is
members?
number of congregations.
Okay.
So I think if it were number of people, then the Catholics would be the top. But this is number of congregations. So it was kind of a
How many?
proud, thankful moment that we made the list.
How many churches from the top of the list to the bottom? What is the count?
40.
40.
There's 40 of them. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
40 different groups.
I didn't
The
know.
one thing that's a little sad is right above us is Hindu yoga and meditation. So we made the list. We're still behind the number of Hindu yoga congregations. And it'd be really nice if we could catch them someday. So other Lutherans, so the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is up here. 5,897. The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, that's the one that we really don't like to have any connection with, but they're way up there. So according to this, they're the 9th largest group as far as number of congregations.
What's
So,
the very bottom?
the very bottom is the Salvation Army,
Oh, wow.
which is a church that, again, they usually all have like one big location for a area. Some of these, of course, have lots of little locations. Anyways, we made the list. For a good thing, actually. All right, we're studying the book of Job. We've had a couple weeks off along the way, but we're going to get into it, and now we'll meet every Wednesday up until the week of Thanksgiving. We started the first 2 chapters. What did God say to Satan about Job? So what's surprising is the book starts not with Satan causing trouble, but with God saying to Satan, my servant Job is righteous and upright. And God starts it, and he points out Job is a faithful man. And then what's Satan's accusation?
You build a fence around them.
You good. You've built a hedge around him. You've made his life easy. You protect him from everything bad, so of course he's gonna be faithful to you. Right? But if you take away what he has, then he's gonna curse you. What was not the reason for Job's sufferings?
God.
Yeah, so sin or God punishing him. Okay, now we got to remember that as we go through the book. Because we're going to have chapters of Job's friends accusing him of doing something wrong. And we get to see behind the scenes right from the start. Job is not suffering because he was sinful or doing something wrong. Right? It's God allowing Satan to test him to prove that his faith is true. Describe the initial tragedies that Job faced. So God said to Satan, you can cause harm to him, just don't take away his life. And so what did Satan take away? His wealth and his family. And his wealth was broken up. There were camels and there were sheep and goats, and I forget all the categories. There were donkeys in there too, and one by one they all get either destroyed or taken away, and then finally his 10 children all die on one day. Right? And this is what happens to Job. But did Job curse God? No. And Satan goes back to God. God says the same thing. Look at Job is still blameless and upright. What was Satan's second accusation? Skin for sin. You know, Job, he doesn't care about his animals. He doesn't even care about his children. But if you hurt Job, then he's going to curse you. Right? And so what did God say?
You're an idiot.
Yeah, you're wrong. But, all right, I'll let you hurt his body. You just can't take away his life. Right? So what additional suffering did Job face? Yeah, painful sores or boils from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. And so God allows Satan to afflict him with some kind of terrible disease. And remember what Job did?
He still prayed.
He still prayed to God. Yep, we'll get that to in a minute.
He scraped it.
He just sat down and he just scraped himself with a broken pot all day long. And you just think, this would have been really hard. All right, and then toward the end last time, what did Job's wife tell him to do? Curse God and die. And so even his wife tells him, just give up. Right? Curse God and die. But Job didn't. Right? Now, I want us to remember the two things. Oh, and I put the wrong reference there. The first one should say chapter 1, verse 21. I want us to remember the two things Job says, one after each episode of tragedy. After he loses everything, including his children, he says, Job 1:21. What does that say? And the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. The name of the Lord be praised. Isn't that a good thing for us to remember? In our lives too, it's just a constant losing stuff, isn't it? Constantly losing things, losing people, losing health. And the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. The name of the Lord be praised. And then after the next episode of actually getting sick and his wife telling him to curse God, then he says something else that's worth remembering. What does he say next? Should we accept good from God but not evil?
Yeah.
And so, if we're so thankful when God gives us good things, we can also trust in God when he gives us bad things and hard things. Okay, it's interesting. Whom did Job know ultimately was in control? God. All right, and so even as Satan is throwing his worst at Job, Job knows it's ultimately God who's in control. Sometimes he gives good and sometimes he gives evil, and we can trust in him either way. All right, we're ready to move on. So, Job chapter 2, starting with verse 11.
Pastor,
Yes.
so then I would think it would be proper to say that God doesn't cause evil to come into our lives, but he allows it.
Yeah, so
'Cause he
we would
can
not
do
say
it.
that
Satan-
God is the cause of evil. Satan is the cause of evil. But it's good to note that as the Bible talks about even evil and the hard things that we do, it's still God who's ultimately in control. And so God is controlling all that happens. And that's a good thing. Sometimes people, they'll try to say, well, you can know God wasn't behind this. And maybe they mean well, but is that a good thought? Something awful happened, and well, no, that's outside God's control. Is that a comforting thing to know? No. And so even the worst things that happen, right, God ultimately is the one in control. And if it comes from God, we can know He's going to do something good through it. Dave?
I was just going to point to 16, first chapter, where the messenger said, fire from God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and servants.
So even as these tragedies are coming upon Job, we hear in one place God tells Satan, do what you want. But then as the tragedies happen, they're from God. All right? And so the devil is the one who's instigating all the evil. But right, God is ultimately the one in control. And that's a good thing. Mario.
I mean, when you say that was the servant's perception. That was,
Yeah. Let's look at that verse. 1 verse 16. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep. And so, Mario's right, it's a servant talking. We're not told whether his words are absolutely true or not. But I think still the point that if fire falls from the sky, God's behind it somehow, right? And so we have this thing. Satan is causing evil in the world, but in the big picture, we know that God's the one who's controlling everything. Right? And if you think this is hard to understand, exactly. That's what the whole book of Job is for. All right. So now the rest of the book is Job wrestling with all this suffering. And I'll read verses 11 to 13. When Job's three friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. And so Job has three friends who come. And of course, just on the outset, this is a nice thing. His friends hear that he's enduring suffering, and they come, and it sounds like they come from a long ways. All right, just to start quick, people ask, can we know anything else about these friends? And we don't know much about them, right? But since you like looking other places up in the Bible, right? You do? Look at that, yeah. Let's keep your finger here. Let's look up a couple verses in Genesis. So keep your finger in Job. Genesis, of course, is the first book of the Bible. Genesis chapter 36. If you turn to Genesis chapter 36 and just look at the heading of the chapter, it's Esau's descendants. Right? Remember who Esau is? Brother of Jacob. They're the sons of Isaac. So Abraham, Isaac has twin boys, Jacob and Esau. Right? Jacob is the one who the Israelites come from. Esau, what are his descendants called? The Edomites. All right? So we're still in Abraham's family, though. Look at verse 11. Hold on. Look at verse 9. Start with verse 9. This is the account of the family line of Esau, the father of the Edomites, in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, the son of Esau's wife Ada, and Ruel, the son of Esau's wife Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz: Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. And this is all names, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But Esau has a son whose name is Eliphaz. Who's the first friend who comes to Job? Eliphaz. So Esau has a son with the same name as the first friend. And in Job it says Eliphaz the Temanite. Looking at verse 11, Genesis 36:11, where would the word Temanite come from?
Teman. No, this-
One of Eliphaz's sons is Teman. All right? So we don't know how this is all connected, but in Job we have Eliphaz the Temanite. And we know that Eliphaz is one of Esau's sons, and Teman is one of Esau's grandsons, and so somehow this Eliphaz seems to be part of Esau's family line. This makes sense? And this kind of supports the idea. Remember about what time period we said Job seemed to live? About the time of Abraham. So this would be a couple generations after Abraham. Okay, this is fitting in. This makes sense? All right, then one other place, if you look back at Genesis 25, verse 2. Promise, this is all the playing with names that we're going to do today. Just this one slide, okay? Genesis 25, verse 2. There's more names. So if you look at Genesis 25, it says Abraham had taken another wife whose name was Keturah. So we know Abraham's wife Sarah. He has a wife named Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. All right, how would that help us with what we read in Job? Look at the second friend's name.
There were a lot of descendants.
Bildad, the Shuhite. So who might a Shuhite be a descendant of? Shua, who was one of Abraham's sons through Keturah. All right? So, some of you love this. Some of you are like, are we done yet? Can we move on? All right? But here would be the point of we see a name in the Bible, and one of the questions we should ask is, what else can we know about this person from the Bible? And all we're seeing is that the first two friends, they seem to be connected to Abraham's family line, but not through the Israelite part, through some of his other descendants. And this all fits together with, we're picturing Job living about in the time of Abraham, east of Israel, where these other tribes are. Right?
And the book of Job was written before the book of Genesis, chronologically.
So it would seem like the events of Job are before the days of Moses. Okay? We don't know when it was written. And so to say, if the book of Job were to be written in the time it describes, it would have been written before the book of Genesis. Because we're thinking of a time period before the days of Moses. But we don't know exactly when it was written. Okay, but it would be safe to say we seem to be describing a time in the days of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, before the days of Moses and the Israelites. This makes sense? All right, the third friend, you can turn back to Job now. The third friend, Zophar the Neamathite. From what I read, we can't even try to find a connection there. All right, so we've got three friends. They seem to be from these other Middle Eastern nations, not from Israel. We're in the days of Abraham. More importantly, what was their goal? It tells us what they came to do. If you look at the end of verse 11, what were they going to do? Sympathize and comfort him. Is that a good goal?
Yes.
Yes, it is. And so here's three friends, and they've got a good goal, and we're going to travel a great distance, and we want to comfort this friend of ours who's going through difficult times. And then they get there, and what do they say? They don't say anything. For how long?
7 days.
7 days. Was that good?
Yes.
Could be.
It shows
It could be.
The jury's kind of out. It seems like on one end, it seems like they just want to be there and support him. And that's a good thing. You wonder if, you had a friend really, really struggling. Maybe you could say something to him, before a whole week went by. All right? The truth is, once the three friends start talking, then you realize, yes, it was good that they didn't talk for 7 days, because what they say isn't actually comforting. But it just is interesting that you kind of wonder, in the days when the book of Job was written, how did the first people reading it, how did they take that? To hear that these three friends show up and they don't say anything. It'd be interesting to understand how people took. Was this good? They just came and they sat and that was good? Or would people say, they didn't really provide any comfort? Right? This is what they do. It makes me think of just a couple questions. Respond to this statement. When other people are hurting, I feel like I need to have all the answers. Do you sometimes feel that way? Do you sometimes maybe even avoid somebody who's hurting just because you don't know what to say?
Yep.
And what could we learn from these three friends?
Sit down and shut up.
Sometimes you can just sit down and just sit there and be with them. And that's all you can do. All right? And so as a pastor, I don't get called into troubling situations as often as people think, but sometimes I have been. And I'd like to think I always have a little something to say. But, I find too that if I were to show up and talk about the Bible for 3 hours with somebody, they probably wouldn't appreciate that in a moment of trouble. And so to come and to share something, but then just to spend time with them, that means a lot. You don't have to know the perfect thing to say, but just being there means a lot. And to put a good construction on it, it really seems like they're waiting for something. What are they waiting for?
For Job to speak.
They're waiting for Job to speak. And so, to put a good construction on their actions, it kind of seems like they show up and they see Job, and what's Job doing? He's just mourning and scraping his sores. And so they sit down next to him, and they say, we're going to sit here until Job wants to talk to us. And it seems like that's their mindset. Dave?
I'm sorry, I was just pondering all these things. Elihu, who comes in at the very end of Job, is a descendant of Ram. Ram was in the lineage of, he's a descendant of Judah.
All right.
That would be after Jacob, Jacob's sons, Judah, and then Ram. And then Elihu is a descendant of Ram.
Maybe we should hold that till we get to him. But bring that up again, because we are trying to see these connections. And so we're going to have a fourth man show up way toward the end of the book, Elihu. And we should, at that point we should look up and see how does he fit into all this too. All right. So most of the rest of the book is going to be these three friends talking with Job. All right? And so once we get into that, it's going to be kind of like a slog in that it's going to be hard to go through all that. Right? And maybe I should have told you that before we started studying the book, but there's like 30-something chapters of these three friends talking with Job. Right? We'll start that next week. But what we have tonight is we get to hear Job talk. Okay? So tonight it's going to be Job talking, and then the next weeks will be this back and forth, Job and his friends. All right? So Job's finally ready to talk. Here's what he does. Chapter 3. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. He said, may the day of my birth perish, and the night that said a boy is conceived. That day may it turn to darkness, may God above not care about it. May no light shine on it. May gloom and utter darkness claim it once more. May a cloud settle over it. May blackness overwhelm it. That night may thick darkness seize it. May it not be included among the days of the year, nor be entered in any of the months. May that night be barren. May no shout of joy be heard in it. May those who curse days curse that day. Those who are ready to rouse Leviathan. May its morning stars become dark. May it wait for daylight in vain and not see the first rays of dawn. For it did not shut the doors of the womb on me to hide trouble from my eyes. That's what Job says. Right from the start. What does he wish? That he was never born. So the first thing out of his mouth, I wish I had never been born. May the day of my birth perish. Was it okay for him to wish that?
He was probably hurting so bad that, yeah.
He's really hurting. Right? And so we're going to notice in the book of Job, not every statement gives us an explanation of is this the right thing to say or not? But we're just told this is what he said. And so he lost all of his possessions. He lost his 10 children. His wife told him to curse God. And he was in bitter agony, sitting on the ground with sores all over his body. And how was he feeling?
Down in the dumps.
It would have been better for me not to have been born. That's what he's feeling, right?
Well, I mean, if you believe that a birth is a gift from God, you know, first of all, he's denigrating, you know, the fact that he's a creation of God, that God created him. And I had one more thought, but I can't remember. Basically, that's it. I mean, he's
So-
trying to remember we're creation of the Lord.
There's certainly a truth in the Bible that we are God's creation. And so the day of our birth, well, God decided on that. And so if somebody were to say, well,
And did
God made a mistake when he made me, that wouldn't be a good thing to say. That's a good point. Right, Denise?
He didn't outright curse God, though.
Good. So we're going to note this as we go through. Job does not curse God. He curses. He curses his birth. He doesn't curse God. Okay, and so the way that we should treat Job is this is a believer in the Lord who's really struggling. And he's struggling so much that he says, oh, why am I even here? It would be so much better if I just were never born. Right? Then those children, they never would have come. They never would have died. My wife wouldn't be so miserable cursing me. I wouldn't be here. Better if I hadn't been born. And we'll notice this as we go through Job, but Job is poetry. And so it's got all of these pictures. What are some of the pictures or the figurative language that Job uses?
Make the world dark.
This darkness. Like that day, I wish the sun never would have come up. I wish darkness would just cover it like a cloud. Right? That's a picture. Brent?
Those who are ready to rouse Leviathan, self-destructive or nonchalant.
Yes. So Leviathan, I'm gonna conveniently do this often, but we're gonna get to that later. All right. So Job chapter 41 tells us about Leviathan, which is a Hebrew word that we don't know what it means in English, which is why we just use the Hebrew word Leviathan, and it seems to be some kind of a sea creature. And there's debate about whether it's a real, actual type of sea creature, or whether it's just like a monster who doesn't exist, but people talk about. And so even today, we'll talk about some monster just to make a point, right? But here, so may those who curse days curse that day. So he's talking about like soothsayers or like people who use witchcraft or omens. There are people still today, but in those days, who would actually give curses. And these people who would give curses, they were so kind of ungodly, or maybe we'd say fearless, that they were even willing to try to bring Leviathan out of the sea. And Job says, those kind of people who do that kind of crazy stuff, I wish they would have cursed my birthday. Right? These people casting all these spells and cursing stuff. They should have cursed the day of my birth. Right? This is how he feels. A few thoughts. Finish this sentence. If you like your birthday, you are blessed. That's exactly the word I was thinking, Cheryl. I don't know if it's good when people can read my mind or not, but that was just what I wanted you to say. If you like your birthday, you're really blessed. And now some of us don't like our birthday just because it reminds us how old we are, maybe. But
I'm just not gonna do it again. I
If-
decided I'm not gonna go through it.
if just the fact that you have a birthday, though,
Yes.
and people think of you, if that's a good thing,
Yeah.
you are incredibly blessed. Do you ever think that way? Right? If I live with the knowledge that my life is a good thing, you are blessed. Because not everybody feels that way.
No, I know they.
Not everybody lives with the thought, it's a good thing that I'm here. And so if your birthday, if it means something, this is a good thing. And you're blessed. Right? Finish this sentence. When we are in pain, we say things that
Without
we
meaning.
might not necessarily mean fully.
Right.
Right? And can we give Job the benefit of the doubt? This man is in way more pain than any of us have ever been in. And so I don't know that it's our place to, well, Job, you shouldn't say it quite like that.
He's trying to express his pain, and doesn't know how to do it.
He's just
It
trying to
hurts so
put his
bad.
pain into words. It's happened to me. I bet it's happened to you, but you've been going through something difficult. Maybe it's physical pain. Maybe it's just some stress or some problem, and you just complain to somebody and say something, and then the next day, all of a sudden you feel way better, and you think back to what you said the previous day, and you kind of are like, oh, I don't know why I said it like that. But then maybe the next day you're down in the dumps again, and what do?
Start all
You
over.
say the same thing over again. All right, and so we just see this illustrated in Job. Here, he's a believer in God. We're going to hear some expressions of faith, but he's just going through a difficult time. And when you're in pain, you say things. You say what you're really feeling, which we usually hide. And so I just wish I weren't born. That was true for Job on that day. And we only read the first part of what he says. Let me keep reading. Verse 11. Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Why were there knees to receive me and breasts that I might be nursed? For now I would be lying down in peace. I would be asleep and at rest with kings and rulers of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins, with princes who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden away in the ground like a stillborn child, like an infant who never saw the light of day? There the wicked cease from turmoil, and there the weary are at rest. Captives also enjoy their ease. They no longer hear the slave drivers shout. The small and great are there, and the slaves are freed from their owners. So Job keeps going. Doesn't get any happier. If his birth couldn't be stopped, then Job wished that he would have been stillborn. Stillborn. And so, if I had to be conceived, if I had to grow inside my mother, I wish I would have been a stillborn baby. I wish I would have been a miscarriage and just put right into the ground. That's what Job says. Of course, they knew about all this stuff back then. They don't have ultrasounds, but there were stillborn babies and miscarriages, and they understood this, right? If I had to be conceived, I wish I just would have died during the birth. That would have been better. All right, notice, it just caught up with me as I was reading it just now, verse 12. Why were there knees to receive me and breasts that I might be nursed? So I was reading that the practice in the ancient world was when a baby was born, they would immediately put him on his father's knees. And that was a way for the father to show, this is my child, I accept him. And of course the mother's breasts, and so you got mother and father right there. That I wish I wouldn't have been received by my father and mother. It would have been better that way. Right? Can you imagine someone saying all this? Right? This is how Job feels.
I would think it would be someone that had no faith that would be saying.
Well, I'm glad you say that, Kenneth. Kenneth says, I would think you'd have to have no faith to say this. And I think what the Bible's trying to tell us is we should be careful not to think what you just said.
Right.
that there are people who have faith in God who are facing such difficulties that thoughts like this come into their minds. Right? As we read Job, we can't accuse Job of not having faith, because God says he has faith. Right? But he's wrestling with these sufferings he can't understand. Lydia?
Aren't there some other examples in the Bible where men have, in a way you think they're cursing God, but they're expressing their disappointment and then God answers them?
Excellent. There are other people in the Bible. Can anyone think of someone else in the Bible who declared they wanted to die?
King David.
David. What are you thinking of with David?
No, he was expressing how it was going down deep when he was suffering.
Good. So King David in the Psalms, we're going to read one tonight if we have time. He talks about him sinking down. And the one thing, I don't know if I can think of a place where David says, I want to die. I think what he says is, I'm dying or I'm right? There's actually two people I can think of who say, I want to die. Right?
Elijah.
Paul,
Well, there's three people. When does Paul say it?
that he longs to go and be with Christ, but he's staying around for their benefit.
All right, so Paul says to live is Christ and to die is gain. Again, though, with Paul, he's not cursing his life. He's recognizing how great heaven is.
True.
Okay, what Lydia is saying, there are people who actually, they hate their life on earth and want to die. Who's one of them, Dave? Wow. Jonah. You're right, Jonah. At the end of Jonah, Jonah says he's so angry that the Ninevites have been forgiven that he wants to die. Good example. Elijah, after the battle with the prophets of Baal, Jezebel decides to kill him. And Elijah, after this huge triumph, he just falls completely into despair. And he says, I want to die. He tells that to an angel. I want to die. Right? Do you know who the other one I have in mind is? The prophet Jeremiah. There's a section in Jeremiah where Jeremiah says exactly what Job says here. Cursed be the day I was born. Right? Cursed be the man who brought my father the news that a baby was born to him. Right? So, yeah, you thought of more examples than I did. Okay, but Jonah, Elijah, and Jeremiah would be other men. They seem to be believers in God. I think Jonah, there might be some question about that, but Elijah and Jeremiah are believers in God, and they come to a point where they say what Job says. Good examples. All right. When you're suffering, why does death sound good? Now, just notice for a second here, Job doesn't talk about eternal life. He's going to talk about that later, right? But not thinking about eternal life in heaven. Why does death sound good when you're suffering?
You don't have to suffer.
Just to be done. And that's the way Job describes it here. I just want to be done. You know, like those other people, kings and such, you know, they did their stuff on earth and then they died and they got to be done. I just want to be done. Right? I think you hear people express this thought, right? Death will be good because then I'll just be gone. I'll just be done. Now, if we step back and think of the whole Bible, is it really good to die?
No. Well, not in that case.
Not in that case. Not in that way. And so Brent said, Paul says to die is gain, and so by faith in Jesus I know I have eternal life. If there's somebody on earth though who just says, I just want to die so I can be done, is death actually going to be a good thing for that person? No. Because where are they going to go? To hell. Okay? And so death isn't the answer in that, well, death just solves all my problems and I can just go away. Doesn't work that way. Okay? Job says that because this is what you say when you're facing troubles, right? I just want to close my eyes and it all be over. All right? We know there's more to the story. There's heaven and there's hell. Death isn't just the answer. This making sense? Okay, these are powerful words that we get to study. Right? Turn ahead from Job. I said we were done with looking up names. I didn't say we were done looking up other places. Isn't that what I said? Turn ahead to Isaiah, just a couple books ahead. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, Isaiah.
Bless you. Gesundheit. Get it done.
Isaiah 57.
Oh, I see.
So here's the prophet Isaiah writing. Isaiah, as he writes this, is not in the dumps like Job was. Right? Look at what Isaiah says. Isaiah 57. The righteous perish, and no one takes it to heart. The devout are taken away, and no one understands that the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. There is actually a little truth to Job's words. Right? Why does God sometimes let the righteous perish?
So they can go be with him.
So they can be with him. What does he spare them?
The trials and tribulations of earth.
Evils. Yes. All right? Now, this is so upside down from the way that we think in life, right? And in the world, we just try to hold on to life as tightly as we can because you only live once, right? And this is all there is. And the Bible actually says that when God allows a young person to go to heaven, that's not a judgment, sparing them from evil. So if you think of Job in light of that verse, if Job had died when he was 10 years younger than he is now, what would have happened?
They would have been happy.
He would have gone to heaven and he never would have to face all this. All right? And so there's some truth to that. If God allows you to die, that doesn't mean that he's against you. You get to go to heaven. And who knows what he's sparing that person of as they face the trials of life. Denise?
Just as a counterpoint, while I was waiting for you to start reading, my eyes fell on verse 21, which says, "There is no peace, says my God, for the wicked."
And so this doesn't work this way for people who don't have, those who don't have faith, right? Okay, so death, it is a rest if I have salvation through God's promises. Okay, so here's Job. Just, I wish I would have been a stillborn. And I wish I never would have been born. And boy, death sounds good as I'm sitting here scraping my sores. That sounds really good. All right, let's finish what Job says. So back in Job, verse 20. Why is light given to those in misery, and life to the bitter of soul, to those who long for death that does not come, who search for it more than for hidden treasure, who are filled with gladness and rejoice when they reach the grave? Why is life given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For sighing has become my daily food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil. What does Job say his daily food was? Sighs. All day long, I'm just eating my sighs. What didn't he ever have?
Peace and rest.
Rest. Quietness. Peace. Okay, now, we said we're not going to accuse Job of losing his faith, right? Are there some things about God he's forgetting as he says these words?
Yeah.
Right? Is a believer in God able to have peace even in the midst of trials? Yes. Okay, he's forgetting some things, but he's just speaking honestly. I go through my day and I have no rest, just turmoil, just pain, just anxiety. Right? Can you ever relate to that? You had times in your life when this is kind of how you felt. And we in our culture, we just don't tell anybody, right? You just put on a smile and say, I'm okay. Right? In ancient cultures, you actually got to express how you were feeling. And so Job tells him, right? You want to know how it's going? I wish I were dead. All I do is eat my tears all day long. I have no peace, just turmoil. How much did Job long for death? He tells us. He uses a picture. How much was he trying to find death? Did you hear his picture? Verse 21. How much was he searching for death? Like someone trying to find a hidden treasure. Well, that's a pretty powerful picture, right? You picture those even people today, you know, they're in their little submarine going to the bottom of the ocean trying to find a shipwreck, and that's how much I long for death, Job says. All right, we've been coming back to this over and over again. Is it wrong for a believer to want to die? No, how so?
Because you'll be with the Lord in heaven.
All right, so if a believer longs for death, knowing that I'm gonna be with the Lord in heaven, when might it be wrong for someone to long to die?
Well, yeah.
If they're rejecting that each day is a gift from God. Right? And so this is a hard thing. Right? I had somebody ask me recently, if someone wants to die, is that wrong? Or if I have a loved one who's suffering, can I pray that they would go to heaven? Could you pray that?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. You absolutely can. But then if God leaves them here on earth a little while longer, what should you do? Thank God for that. Each day is a blessing. One day we'll be in heaven. All right, we got to finish talking about something that one of you just brought up, and I tried to ignore because I didn't want to talk about it yet. As much as Job was struggling, what doesn't he mention?
God.
What's he not going to do?
Take his life.
Suicide.
Yeah.
Think of all, he says like the saddest, most depressed things that someone could possibly say, right? But what does he not mention as a possibility? Killing himself.
Ending his life.
That was not on his mind. And this is really important to see. Here is a man who is facing the most incredible suffering, more than anyone else, other than Jesus on the cross has faced. And it wasn't on his mind, I'm going to end my life. I wish that I would die. I wish God would just let this sickness take me. But it's not on his mind that I'm going to end this. And this is so important to recognize. All right? Suicide isn't the answer. And here Job, he's obviously depressed and discouraged and in despair. Right? But he's not going to take his life. And the reason why is what he already said in chapter 1, verse 21. What was that verse? Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. The name of the Lord be praised. Who is it who gives life?
God.
The Lord. Who is it who takes away life?
God.
The Lord. And so I just think this is really powerful to recognize. All right, here is Job. It's a believer really struggling with life, saying some of the darkest things that you find in the Bible, and we can relate to some of them, but not bringing up, well, an option is I'm just going to end my life. Right? He's waiting for God to give him an answer. That's what he's going to do. I'm going to wait for the Lord. I bring this up because you know in our world, it is more and more accepted that we should be able to end our life when we want to. All right? So, some places they have commercials about it. Right? This is a real commercial. My dying wish is my family won't see me suffer and I won't have to. And so it says, you can't see the small print. Sophie, kitchen disco diva, and mom, terminal breast cancer. When I cannot stay, let me choose how do I go. And it's an ad for physician-assisted suicide. This comes from England, right? These are some of the signs people held up in London as they were trying to get the right to die. Freedom of choice, yes to assisted dying. Give me choice over my death. Right? And I haven't kept up on this totally, but in the United Kingdom now, physician-assisted suicide is legal. It's legal all over Canada. And it's legal in a number of states in the United States.
Wasn't there oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Right? So here's some pictures from New York. My life, my death, my way. New Yorkers for end-of-life choices. Right? Now, on one side, you can understand why people are doing this. If somebody's suffering like Job, and they want to die, and in America, people should get to do what they want to do, right? Why would we let them die? It's just the moment that you say, if we can do that, who have you become? God. And boy, we should be very careful not to become God, because we can't handle that. And maybe use Job as an example. I don't want to spoil the end of the book, but is Job just going to all of a sudden die? Do you know what happens at the end of the book? He goes and lives 140 more years, and right? If you and I decide, I'm going to decide when to take my life, what are we eliminating for God the chance to do? Heal us or save us. And what are we saying is always a bad thing?
Suffering.
Is suffering always a bad thing that no one should ever have to go through? No. Right? Do you see how this whole movement, there's a part of it that as human beings we can understand. I should have the right to decide when I die. It's just, we don't have that right. That is God's right. And we don't know what God is able to do through our lives, even through our suffering. And the idea that the moment I face suffering, the answer is to end my life. Is that a good way for human beings to live their life? The moment I face suffering, I should end my life. No, this is wrong.
We have a short life.
This is totally wrong. Why? Right? The more this spreads, why would any of us still be here? Can we be honest? Why would any of us? If the goal is to not suffer, why would any of us still be around? All right, this is an evil thing. Lydia?
You think this idea is spreading more because people have turned away from God?
I absolutely believe so. If you don't have God, right, it's a lot harder to face suffering. And if you don't have the knowledge of heaven and hell, both of them, there's a heaven and there's a hell, then that kind of tells you I should be able to decide it. Certainly if you don't believe in God, well, who's your God if you don't believe in the true God? It's yourself, all right? This is a dangerous thing. Right? And now we see this, suicide being encouraged, even in our country, and then something happens like happened yesterday in Tulsa.
Yeah.
Did you hear what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
A boy at a boys' home was doing something with an off-duty police officer and grabbed his gun and shot himself to death. And of course we're shocked by that and moved by that. It's kind of ironic that we hold up signs like this. If you hold up a sign like this, can you say that a teenager taking his life is wrong?
No, because even that assisted suicide has been used in Canada for teenagers already.
And this is what a slippery slope, right? What a slippery slope. That life is a gift from God, and even Job recognized that. Even Job recognized that. Right now in Catechism tonight, we've been going through the commandments. And last week we got to the 5th commandment. What's the 5th commandment? You shall not murder. And we made about halfway through, because then we got stopped because I brought up suicide. And I think we have 8 kids here. I think 5 of them told a story of a classmate they know who's talked about committing suicide. right? And these are 6 days prayers, right? And this is the world that we live in, right? The thought, all suffering is bad, I should never have to suffer, and if I have to suffer, then the best way to do it is just to end my life. And realize this is so contrary to God and His promises, right? And so, what do we say? I should have left more than 1 minute to talk about what we could say. Right? Let's read Psalm 13. If you're in Job, Psalms is right after Job. Somebody mentioned King David as someone who had lots of troubles and struggles, and that's absolutely true. Right? But when you read David's Psalms, he writes a whole bunch of Psalms. A lot of his Psalms talk about how hard life is. Right? But look at Psalm 13 and see if this gives us something to say when we or others are struggling with life. Psalm 13, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts, and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him. My foes will rejoice when I fall. Does this sound kind of like Job? How long am I going to have to face? Now, again, with David, there's an enemy, so there's an added, somebody's actually trying to kill him, but this, I can't see how this ends. I'm going to die. But look at the last 2 verses. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. And so here is David, feeling at the end of his life, wondering when he's going to die. And yet, what does he cling to? And what word does he use with love? What kind of love does God have? God's unfailing love. And whenever you or I or someone you know is wondering, is my life worth it? Should I be here? Right? What you need to do is you need to run to God's unfailing love. And it never runs out. And it never stops. It doesn't matter what you're facing or what they're facing. Right? Did God still love Job in the middle of all this?
Yes.
Absolutely. Right? I trust in your unfailing love. Even when I can't see or understand. This is the hope that the Bible gives us. Right? God's love for you hasn't changed. Right? A couple other places we don't have time to read, but Psalm 139, that's where it says, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one came to be. And so Job says, oh, I wish I wouldn't have been born. Here's where God says, but I'm the one who made you and formed you. And it was a good thing you were born. And I've got your life all planned out. Don't think you're a mistake. Right? Romans 8. This is where if God is for us, who can be against us? And then it talks about Jesus. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. How will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Right? You think, what promises from God? And just to end, here's what we're going to get to in Job. Probably next year sometime. In chapter 19. But Job himself, in the middle of the book, he says, I know that my Redeemer lives and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes. I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. And you say, did Job have hope? Yes, he doesn't always talk that way, but we're the same way, right? You have times when you're in the dumps and you don't talk about hope. You talk about how bad it is. This was his hope, right? One day I'm going to see my Redeemer face to face. And even death, that's not the end. I know that my Redeemer lives, and this is the hope that God gives us. It's a pretty powerful section of God's Word to go through. Right? So we can talk. Any questions or comments you have next time, bring them up. And certainly if you or anyone you know is ever struggling with suicide, Reach out to your brothers and sisters in Christ. And reach out to me. And people care about you. God cares about you. And next time we'll get to hear these friends start really long speeches. It'll be really great for us to study. I know it doesn't sound that great. It really will be great for us to study. All right, let's say a prayer. Dear Lord, it's good for us to see Job in the depths, because there's days when we're there too. It's good for us to see a fellow believer say he wish he hadn't been born, because a lot of us have had days when we felt that way too. Lord, we're thankful that you give us more in your word than just this one chapter. You tell us that we can trust in your unfailing love. You remind us of how Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead to give us life and hope and peace. Lord, we and our world are hurting. And there's so many people, including some of us, who wonder if life's really worth living. Let us and our church and Christians everywhere point people to you and your love and grace, which is exactly what we need. Keep us and the people of our church in your care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.